Okay, let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating and honestly pretty provocative argument from a Blue Heron Health news article. It suggests a whole different way to think about high blood pressure, and it claims it all boils down to one single, pretty surprising culprit.
And really, the whole thing kicks off with this one simple but powerful question. It wants you to forget, just for a second, everything you think you know about hypertension. Just consider this one radical idea. What if there's one specific organ that's the secret driver behind almost every single case?
So, to set the stage, the author hits us with a pretty startling number. The source material claims that in a whopping 95% of high blood pressure cases, doctors can't actually pinpoint one specific cause. Sure, they might point to risk factors like diet or your genes, but the real underlying trigger? It's basically a medical mystery. And that's the mystery this article tries to solve.
And to really build up this mystery, the article starts by ruling out all the usual suspects. It's not the heart. Nope. Not the kidneys. Not even the arteries. The source is super clear on this. The problem doesn't start in the cardiovascular system at all. So, if it's none of those, what on earth could it be?
Well, to find the answer, we're not going to dig through some dry medical textbook. Instead, the article tells a very personal story. A story about crisis and eventually discovery. You'll see, this wasn't just some theory for the author. It was a real life-or-death situation.
Meet the author, Christian Goodman. He's an alternative health expert, so you'd think he'd have this all figured out, right? But his own blood pressure was through the roof, averaging 185/129. That is dangerously high, putting him at a massive risk for a stroke or a heart attack. So not only was his life on the line, but his whole professional reputation was too.
So, naturally, he did what pretty much any of us would do. He threw everything he had at the problem. He started eating super healthy, he worked out 5 times a week, and he took a ton of different supplements. You know, all the things we're always told to do.
And here's the kicker. The real turning point in his story. After all that work, all that effort, his blood pressure didn't just stay high, it actually got worse. And that crushing failure is what forced him to completely abandon conventional wisdom and start searching for a totally different kind of answer.
And that search led him to a breakthrough. He stumbled on some research that seemed almost, too simple to be true, but it ended up completely changing how he understood the entire problem.
Now, this study he found, published in the Journal of Hypertension, it wasn't about some new pill or a crazy diet. It was just this. Participants sat down and just consciously slowed their breathing for a few minutes. That's it. A simple, focused breathing exercise. But just look at the results. The average blood pressure in the group dropped significantly. It wasn't, a total cure-all, but it was a clear, measurable improvement from just a few minutes of slow breathing. For Goodman, this was like a huge light bulb going off. It was the first real clue that maybe he'd been looking in all the wrong places.
You know how it is. This one clue sent him spiraling down a research rabbit hole where he claims he found even more evidence. He found studies from decades ago showing that simple relaxation and other mind-body exercises could seriously lower blood pressure. One even suggested it could reverse the hardening of arteries. A real pattern was starting to take shape.
Okay, so think about it. If these simple mind-body exercises can have such a huge effect, what does that tell us about the real root cause of high blood pressure? This leads us right to the big reveal from the source material.
So after ruling out the heart, the kidneys, all the usual stuff, and seeing what a little breathing and relaxation can do, the author asks it one last time. What's the one organ that's actually in charge here?
And there it is, the answer. According to the source, the brain. The whole argument is that high blood pressure isn't a mechanical problem with your body's plumbing, but a signaling problem, one that starts in your body's command center. But why? That's the million-dollar question, right? Well, the author argues our brains are getting bombarded all day, every day by 4 different kinds of stress. And it's not just feeling worried. It's the physical stress when you're sick or working crazy hours. It's the sensory stress from, sitting in traffic, even too much TV. Then there's the emotional stuff and the mental stress from a tough, long-term project. When all this becomes chronic, the brain gets stuck in this loop, just constantly telling the body, keep the pressure up.
Okay, so if the problem is a brain that's stuck in overdrive, constantly sending out these stress signals, well then the solution has to be about interrupting that signal, right? This brings us to the author's proposed fix.
He calls his solution a focused break.
Think of it like rebooting a computer that's frozen. The idea is to use a specific mind-body exercise to give the brain a short, complete rest from all that stress. That brief pause allows the brain to kind of reset itself and stop sending out those constant high-alert signals.
So what is this method exactly? Well, as the source describes it, it's basically a program built around these mind-body exercises. The main things they highlight are that it's super simple to follow and it's all audio-guided. So you don't have to learn anything complicated, you just listen and follow along.
And all of this really brings us to the final big idea at the heart of this whole thing. It challenges the conventional approach and asks a really simple question. What if the battle for healthy blood pressure is won not in the gym or in the kitchen, but in the quiet space between our thoughts?